Hello. Today I want to talk to you about the current climate of law enforcement in this country. It's really disheartening, and I thought that I would take an opportunity to speak to you about my feelings on the topic. You can see that on my badge I'm wearing what we call a mourning band, and that mourning band is worn by all law enforcement officers when an officer is killed in the line of duty in the state of California. This year alone, 6 weeks into the year, nationwide there has already been 18 law enforcement officers that have died in the line of duty, 1/3 of them by gunfire. In my 37 years in law enforcement, I've never seen such a lack of respect for our profession and such violent attacks on our officers. More officers are being shot and killed than ever before. This past Monday, we lost another officer in California. Officer Keith Boyer of the Whittier Police Department was shot and killed after he and his partner were investigating a traffic collision in the city of Whittier. And many of you may have seen the press conference on television where their chief, Jeff Piper, stated, "We need to wake up. Enough is enough. You're passing these propositions and you're creating these laws that are raising the crime rates in the state of California." What Chief Piper was referring to was Assembly Bill 109, Proposition 47, and Proposition 57, and to some extent, the recent Proposition 64. You need to take a moment and you need to look up and educate yourself on what these propositions were and how they impact community safety. We know that these propositions are a result of the voting public, and that AB 109 was passed by the state legislature, who were also voted into office by the voting public. Every state association representing law enforcement, the chiefs, the sheriffs, police officers, the district attorneys association, opposed this legislation and these propositions. We knew what was going to happen if they passed. AB 109 was signed by the governor in 2011 after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that California prisons were overcrowded. AB 109 moved certain felony offenders back into the county jail system. As a result, thousands of criminals were released back into our local communities. Prop 47 stopped some nonviolent criminals from going into prison. It also reduced certain felony crimes to misdemeanors. The goal of the initiative was to fund additional substance abuse and mental health services with the savings from housing incarcerations, from lowering incarcerations. We have not seen this come to fruition yet. Since the passing of these propositions, the increase in property crime in California is the largest year after year increase since the 1960s. The increase in violent crime is the largest year after year increase since the 1990s. As a result, what we are seeing are repeat offenders committing multiple crimes because they know that there are no consequences and that they will not be held accountable. There are no consequences for these crimes any longer. It's a revolving door for these criminals, and they know it. The suspect that shot and killed Whittier police officer Boyer was a parolee who had just been recently released from prison for armed robbery. Since being released from prison in April of 2016, he violated his parole 5 times by committing a number of additional criminal offenses. He served what is known as flash incarcerations. In a flash incarceration, an offender serves a 10-day jail sentence in county jail for a parole violation instead of being sent back to prison as was in the past. Flash incarcerations were authorized under AB 109, which was signed into law by Governor Jerry Brown in 2011. This needs to stop. I am asking you to educate yourself and make sure that you understand what you're voting for. The senseless killing of law enforcement officers cannot continue. We, and I emphasize we, need to make sure that those that commit crimes are held more accountable for their actions. I want you to know that I truly appreciate all of the support I get from the Buena Park community. And I just want to thank you for your time.
All right, everyone, we'll get started. I'm Lieutenant Geyer. I oversee the community impact team for the city of Buena Park. I'm also the West Area Commander for the city and the Patrol Watch Commander working today. We decided to put on this presentation. I know a lot of you here are impacted by homelessness in some way. Some of you have been homeless at one time. Some of you have family members who are homeless. Some of you operate businesses who are impacted by homelessness. Some of you just want to help them out and find ways of what you can do to help out the homeless. So all of you are here for a reason. So thank you for coming. I know a lot of you have other things going on this time of day, but to be here demonstrates that you have a real concern for this issue, and obviously it's been an issue for a long time for us, especially here at the police department and the city. And today we're not here to talk about the Area Command Program, but we're here to talk about homelessness, which crosses into all three of the areas in Buena Park. I think everyone has been out at some point in the city and seen homeless people. Certain areas, obviously, they frequent more, and some of you may be impacted more than others depending on where you work and where you reside. I'm going to introduce some of the challenges that we have with homelessness with the police department. Homeless people have been around for several years. In years past, there was less of them. They weren't as frequent out on the streets, and people didn't really call to complain about homeless people because there weren't cell phones. Now, people with cell phones call about homeless people all the time. Sometimes it's legitimate, they're in violation of some crime or committing a crime, or sometimes it's a municipal code violation, drinking in public, urinating in public, everybody knows panhandling. There are a lot of things that people do who are homeless that people are offended by, or they want to report whatever those issues are to the police. And there's also a lot of homeless people who don't do any of those crimes, but people still call about them. So we constantly get calls for service dealing with homeless people at the police department. In years past, the answer was write them a ticket, take them to jail, tell them, take off, you're not welcome here, leave. That was pretty much how we dealt with it for a really long time. That was really the only mechanism we knew how to deal with it. Obviously, we had people calling complaining about it, so we felt the need to accommodate that person who was complaining about it. As years passed, and in recent times, we've realized that that's not resolving the long-term problem. Homeless people still violate those crimes, they still commit municipal codes, but no one gets locked up in prison for being homeless and for committing municipal code violations. And so a lot of the times they were right back, they'd really get a citation right back to where they were, still committing the same violations, same people would still call, make the complaints. So we realized we needed to take a more proactive approach, and that entailed a lot of different factors that came into play, and a lot of it has to do with being creative on how we can address the situation. And working with city officials and basically making corroboration, we agreed that we would take a more proactive approach as far as more outreach to homeless people and establishing what those root causes are, what are making them homeless. I don't know if a lot of you know, but there are 600 homeless people living in the riverbed in Santa Ana. And 600 of them is a lot of people. If we had 600 homeless people living in our city in a flood control channel, there'd be a lot of people that would have issue with it. We'd get a lot of complaints, and because anytime you have that situation, those people require facilities, they require food, their basic needs need to get met, and a lot of times people are impacted in a negative way by that. So fortunately for us, we got on it pretty early and started doing more outreach. We partnered with a company called CityNet, who works with homeless people to find them long-term housing. That's the ultimate goal, is to get them off the street and into housing. Whether it's short-term or long-term, obviously the goal is to get them into long-term housing. but there's a process that needs to take place. Homelessness comes in all different forms, and these are the three main forms that we deal with, and some of these are very challenging. Some people are homeless because they got laid off from their job. They were a skilled worker and they were laid off, and the opportunity hasn't presented themselves to get back in the workplace. That's a contingency of people. Bad luck, made a mistake at work, got fired. Everybody knows why you can get laid off at work. You know, some people just, or they don't have the skills to get back into the job workplace for whatever reason. The have-nots, those are the people who we believe can be assisted with some type of, basically a push. You know, everybody could use assistance at times, and what that assistance is comes in a lot of different forms. For some people, it's getting them into a place where they have an opportunity, getting them networked with job opportunities, with interviews, whatever that is. You know, into a motel for temporary housing until they can get into another place that opens up for them. Whatever that may be, those people sometimes just need some support. They don't have any family in their life, their family's out of state, whatever that is. The will-nots, those are a lot of the people that we deal with who are people who just don't want to go along with the program. They're on drugs, they're on alcohol, they have some kind of substance abuse problem, whatever it is, and they're content with being out on the street. You offer the assistance to them, they refuse. Those are a challenge to us, obviously, because the primary goal is to offer them outreach and get them assistance. But if someone doesn't want assistance or refuses it, it kind of limits our options on what we can do. Now, if they're in violation of the law and they're committing crimes, you know, we have an obligation to deal with those issues. And we still issue citations. We still take people to jail when necessary. But ultimately, the primary goal is to help them too. So nobody is excluded from getting assistance. It's just a matter of what's going to be that push that's going to get them to want to take assistance. Some people get tired of going in and out of jail. Some people get tired of the police talking to them, telling them, hey, so-and-so's complaining, you're panhandling in front of their business. They get tired of that. They don't want to be talking to the police all the time. And at some point, they change their mind and say, hey, I'm tired of this. I'm willing to do what it takes now. Ultimately, that's the goal, because when we write them a ticket, our goal is not to lock them up in jail or prison. It's to get them motivated to say, hey, I have another option out there. There's other available options for me that'll make my life better. So in some cases, that's our best recourse. And there are a lot of people who you know, need to go to rehabilitation, whatever that is, whatever their hang-up is, or their trigger per se, that's keeping them from progressing out of homelessness, is something that we need to find out what that is and then guide them toward that resource. Obviously, substance abuse is a big problem in Buena Park and all over in Orange County, LA. Everyone hears on TV about all the substances out there, prescription medications, illicit drugs, you name it. People are on it out here. A lot of people are on it. Then you have the can-nots, which are people who don't have the physical ability to assist themselves, whether it be mental health. Some people are born with something that triggers them later on in life where they have mental health issues, and they're not able to assist themselves for whatever reason. We have partnerships in place to deal with that too. We partner with the county the psychological team, who goes out with us now once a week. This is all something new that we've implemented in the past 6 months to 8 months, where we have a clinician ride with our officers once a week, and they go out and case manage some of the people in our community who have mental health issues, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, you know, whatever it is. Some of these are caused by chronic drug use. Not all the time, though. Some people, it comes naturally because of genetics or whatever reason. So a lot of those people are out there. There's a lot of people with mental health problems. The biggest mental health facility in the entire country, does anybody know what that is? Where it's at? The LA County Jail. The second biggest one is in New York City, in the county, in the jail. So what does that tell you about the focus on mental health? You know, they're basically, the most people that are getting the most help are inside custody already, which is unfortunate because it doesn't necessarily resolve the problem, because a lot of these people who have mental health problems, and some of you are probably impacted, have family members that have mental health problems. They didn't intend on committing crimes. They didn't have any bad intentions, but their mental illness overtakes them and they end up committing crimes and end up in custody because of that. So it's unfortunate, but those are a challenge for us. We have to work with mental health consistently, and we have to continually go back and contact those same people repeatedly. And some of the biggest challenges with that is the recognition that they have a mental health problem, because a lot of people with mental health issues think that they're fine. They don't recognize that they have a mental health problem. And so if you tell somebody they have a mental health problem and they don't believe it, that creates issues for us. You know, obviously, we're the bad guys. We're the ones trying to, you know, intervene in their life or be nosy or whatever. So that's one of our challenges with that. So, and then there's, of course, I skipped one group, but there's also people who are dependents. You know, they were married to somebody and they didn't work. You know, they were being taken care of by somebody, and all of a sudden that dependent went away. Or they were a victim of domestic violence, some type of assault in the home. You know, those people are out there too, and there are resources for them also. I would say they're more of a have-not. I probably skipped over them when I was discussing that, but there are a lot of people out there who just need some support, and when you lose your support, sometimes you're going to require police, mental health, counseling, whatever it may be. Everyone's different on what will be you know, their antidote to get them up and running again. So obviously there's a lot of other reasons why people are homeless, but one of the challenges that we have while dealing with this is that sometimes you have to try different approaches with different people. Sometimes you can continually try the same approach. If it's not working, you have to try something else. And one approach for one person may work the first time. Some people, it's constantly taking a different approach each time, or constantly taking them to and from a rehab or a detox location and having them fall out. We deal with some people that we've taken to Santa Ana or to wherever, you know, 3 or 4 times over a few months or 6 months, and you think this is the time they're gonna stick it out, and they tell you, this is my time, I'm gonna do it this time, and they fall out for whatever reason. So it's a constant challenge to always say, you know, and every time we think we have a, you know, a successful case, for whatever reason they fall out and we're back starting over again. And the key is not to give up on those people, because for whatever reason they fell out, they may have had a good reason to fall out, or they just weren't ready. They thought they were ready, they wanted to appease us, whatever it was, they wanted to try to make it work. Most people know they want to try to fix it. It's just a matter of, is it the right time, and are they in the right state of mind to make it happen? So obviously, this is the kind of thing we want to avoid in Buena Park. Sometimes mental health is a big factor in a lot of these people we deal with, and one of the symptoms of a mental health problem often is hoarding. Some people have homes and they hoard inside their house, and it never becomes a problem, and we don't even hear about it until they pass away or until some neighbor complains. But there are a lot of people who live in their own house like this. There are houses in this city that are significantly worse that most of you couldn't even walk into without getting sick when you walk in. We've been in those homes, so there's people who have homes that live in those type of places. And obviously if we know about it, we want to address that, because most of these people need some type of assistance, and sometimes they don't even recognize that they even have a problem. And obviously this creates a lot of issues for us. You know, this is next to a freeway. You know, this particular couple were alcoholics, drug addicts, use needles, and a lot of that stuff gets left behind. You know, they leave needles around, they defecate in public, leave it there in buckets. I mean, I don't want to be gross here, but everybody can imagine that it's not easy to live right there off the side of the freeway, and it creates a health hazard and a cleanup hazard. And when it's right by the freeway right there, imagine the calls for service that come into the police department saying, hey, you need to fix that problem right there. And they put it on us to say, you need to fix that. And it's not that simple. Sometimes it takes a long time, and sometimes it takes a lot of effort to get through to these people and get them to ramificate that. And it just so happens that these same people have moved in that same area several times. And when you have those issues with drugs and alcohol, a lot of times, you know, we're unsuccessful. We keep trying, and it's just a constant battle. For whatever reason, these people just don't get past that intoxication and can't get past or the recognition of what the consequences are of their actions. Same thing, this is behind a business. You know, if you're operating that business right there, you know, that's a problem. Sometimes these people will steal from the businesses at nighttime. They'll break in and take water. They'll, you know, do things like that. And a lot of it's basic needs stuff, unfortunately. But when you're running a business there, you know, that's damaging to your business. So a lot of these people will call and complain and say, hey, you know, this is becoming a hazard at my property. And if I was operating a business, I don't think I would want that behind my business. I don't think most of you would either. Public parks, that's where a lot of them go. I know if any of you live by Peak Park, that's one of the locations where a lot of the homeless people go and hang out. We're constantly trying to address that problem because it's difficult for us because you have a public park where they can sit and have grass to sit on, you know, and it's comfortable for them to go. But it's a public park. It's welcome for everybody. So we try to work with them if they're in the park and they're, you know, enjoying the park like anybody else. Everyone has a right to enjoy the park. Just because you're homeless doesn't mean you can't be at the park. There's no law that prohibits you from being at the park because you're homeless. Now, when you start to store all your personal property in public like this, we do have a municipal code for that. And, you know, that's kind of challenging too. A lot of these people, you know, won't claim the property if you see them. They'll say, oh, that's not my bag, you know, which is fine. You know, they obviously don't want to have any open cases, so they recognize that they are kind of taking advantage of it. And obviously they need personal storage space. You know, the homeless, if you're homeless, you have clothing, you have your basic needs stuff. So a lot of people have come up with different ideas on what we can do to remedy that. The one thing we try to do is work with these people, though, who are at the park, and obviously drinking alcohol in the public park. We address that because if they're drinking and they get drunk, then they're harassing the people who are in the park. They get obnoxious. We want to avoid the behavior and address the behavior, not the fact that they're homeless. So if they're in the park and they're not causing a disturbance and they're minding their own business and they're not committing any crimes, they're welcome there just like everybody else. And I think some people who call us don't understand that. They don't want them hanging out in the park at all. And unfortunately, those people, we have to tell them, hey, you know, it's a public park. They have a right to be there. And they have to get used to seeing homeless people in the community because they're everywhere now. It's just what we're dealing with. There's a lot of different reasons why. There's so many more. I won't go into all the reasons, and a lot of it's subjective on why there's so many more homeless people. But you can kind of figure out why there's so many more homeless people just based on, you know, economic factors, narcotic use, you know, decriminalization of a lot of crimes. There's a lot of things that go into it, but there are a lot of them. Our calls for service is one of the things that significantly impact our time. When it's a homeless person, you know, sometimes they do commit crimes, but a lot of the times there's really no crime they're committing, but people still call and either say they're committing a crime when they're really not, which makes it challenging for us because we'll show up and realize that the person's just sitting on the bus stop and somebody called and didn't like it. Hey, when you're on your cell phone, oh yeah, I can just call right now. You know, get on my cell phone and call the police because this homeless guy's at the bus stop. It's not that simple, you know. You can sit on the bus stop, you know, that's legal to do. So, you know, obviously, most of the time when people call, those are the minority of calls, it's something offensive to them. Either someone in front of their business panhandling, someone gets accosted by one while they go into a store. They felt like they were threatened for whatever reason. Lots of different reasons why. Some of you have called maybe at times because of some issue with a homeless person. And sometimes it's warranted. There are homeless people who don't abide by the same rules, and they feel that they can do things that other people, you know, a lot of them just don't care because they don't have either responsibility or you know, care about the ramifications for what they're doing. And then there's a lot of them who want to accommodate us and ask us, hey, officer, what do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? And most of the time, they will do what we ask them because they want to get along with people in the community. They don't want to be a nuisance. You know, most of them just, you know, are trying to get by. They want to get by and, you know, get their basic needs met, just like all of us do. So you can imagine, just in the wintertime alone, 638 homeless-related calls. You know, all these calls require 2 officers to show up, sometimes more, depending on what the person's doing and what kind of behavior they have. Some of these people are aggressive, sometimes they're violent, and that's obviously the minority of them. Most of them are cooperative and do what we ask them to do. And most of the time, those calls we go on, you know, we have an obligation to accommodate both sides. You have the citizen who has some issue with the homeless person, and you also have to accommodate for the homeless person who needs some type of assistance or, you know, may have a reason. They may have a good reason why they're doing what they're doing, and it's having good communication with them and putting some rules in place for them. If people know the rules to follow and they recognize there's a consequence for the rules, they're more likely to, you know, get in line and follow the rules. If you let them do whatever they want and you don't hold them accountable to anything, they'll do whatever they want. And a lot of times, those consequences are bad for businesses and for homeowners and residents too. Summer months, a lot of times it gets a little busier. The Fullerton Armory opens up during the winter time, during the cold season, so a lot of them will go to the Armory. Some of these people don't get along well with others. Some of them are homeless because they don't get along with others. They don't get along with their family, and that's why they're homeless. Nobody in their family will take them in. Not all, but sometimes. So if you don't get along with others, do you want to go live in the Fullerton Armory where you can't get along with other people living there? You have a whole group. You know, you can't get along with 1 or 2 people, and now you got 50 people or 100 people in that same room, all vying for the same amount of space. Not everybody can live in those in that situation. Some people, not a problem. Cold season, I'm going to the Armory. That's the best place where I can get warm and get food. Hey, if that's what it takes. So in the summer months, things pick up. It's hotter outside. People are out and about. People are drinking more alcohol in the summertime. Lots of different reasons, but activity picks up during the summertime with homeless issues.
But we also get mixed signals on the homelessness. We have some people calling saying, why can't you help them? And then my phone rings as a watch commander saying, hey, why don't you leave them alone? Why are you picking on them? So we get mixed signals. And I think that's reflective of society. It's not just a law enforcement issue as far as calls for service. I know in my own church, for instance, I hear people talk about helping the people, and they talk like it's antiquity, and there's people begging for alms at the gates of the city. And I have to kind of educate them a little bit along the way from a law enforcement perspective and say, hey, I know you guys mean goodwill, I know you guys want to be Christ-like, I get that, but those people of today and modern society are not just dealing with resource or deprivation issues, they're dealing also with severe psychiatric issues, and it's coupled and magnified by illicit street drugs, especially methamphetamine. It just really amps up or magnifies the danger factor. So I always tell people, hey, that's great that you want to help, but like Brad said, and I would really emphasize that, is use a third-party intermediary. There are mental health care professionals and outreach groups that will go and help the people. I myself, on a personal level, I've seen people, I don't just give them cash, I've actually just bought them on duty or off duty, just bought them a meal or something. But just to hand them cash is not a good thing. Just so you know, our own police officers sometimes arrest the transients for different issues, criminal law violations, and when they go through their property, like we do with all arrestees, a custodial search, they find literally hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars on them. And it's all small denominations, and they don't have any overhead costs, so to speak, and I'm not trying to be flippant about it, but they're not paying taxes, so it just accrues, plus they have different assistance programs they're part of. Then on top of it, they have free lunch cards from Subway or these different other food places, and they'll have a stack of them. Well, if you open my wallet right now, I don't have $300, $400, $500 cash and stuff, and I bet most of you don't either, because they're accruing. So it's not always a resource issue. But again, we get these mixed signals from the public about enforce, enforce, enforce. I recently had a story where an officer went to write citations for an ongoing problem about people drinking in public at Lincoln and Knott. And as he wrote the citation out, somebody pulled up and started videotaping him with her cell phone. And then she interrupted the officer and said, I want to make sure what you're doing, you're not going to beat this guy. And the person, in this case the arrestee or the transient, was not being physically arrested. He was just receiving a citation for a municipal code violation, drinking in public. But we get those kinds of signals. And it really, again, it's reflective society, but it also, ever since that high-profile killing of Kelly Thomas, that kind of put the public awareness to, and we got a lot of backlash on that. So again, we get mixed signals. And so like what Brad's saying is, we have a real narrow capability of what we can do. They have to be criminal law violations, an assault and battery, a theft, a disturbance where somebody wants to place that person under a private person's arrest. We, law enforcement, cannot be the victims of a disturbance. There has to be a robbery, something significant where we can step in. Otherwise, we're going over there just kind of keeping the peace, social order, trying to make sure people are okay. But we're very limited on what we can do on all that. But we need help from the public. This is, again, not just a law enforcement mission. It's so much broader than that. And again, like Brad alluded to, there's people out there with some really great hearts and they really want to help, but they're a little naive on sometimes on what they're dealing with. And I don't want to see good people get hurt, so they have their hearts in the right place. So please be very careful when you're engaging. Again, there's all sorts of businesses and organizations out there that know how to handle and try to keep these people in a good mode, a good frame of mind, keep everybody safe. So that's all I wanted to share with you.
Thank you. So obviously, just like everyone else, you know, police officers have compassion for people too. Compassion for people who need help. Compassion when you feel you have an opportunity to assist. And you know, sometimes it's just a matter of finding what that right trigger is that's going to really assist them. And it's not as simple as giving them something. There may be more to it. For some people, that might be the answer. But that's a small group of people that just need a little bit of a handout. Other people require a lot more assistance on some other level. So we'll get off that topic, but you know, one of the myths when we talk about homelessness is, and it's even a myth amongst police officers also, you know, and I've even talked to people who are police officers who have since retired and out of the profession that feel the same way, because for a long time this was the belief. And that is that these people want to be homeless. Everyone's like, oh yeah, they want to be out there. Now, that's a very small number of people who actually want to be homeless. And I use this example, you know, everybody went to elementary school in their life, and everyone got asked when they were a kid, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? You know, a police officer, a doctor, an astronaut, an athlete, whatever it was. Not once did everybody say, I want to be homeless and an alcoholic out on the street with no help. No one ever said that when they were growing up. No one ever believed that when they were growing up. So at some point, that person fell off the track, whether it be making poor choices, whether it be something, a natural occurrence that happened with their train of thought or whatever it was, whether they were a victim of some crime. There are a lot of different reasons why, and I've kind of already explained those reasons. So just because those people had those things happen doesn't mean they want to be in the situation that they're in. Sometimes they've been in the situation for so long they don't recognize that they don't want to be out of that situation. And there was one person I dealt with not too long ago that had been out for close to 30 years. And we tried to take him in for assistance, and he immediately resisted and went back to where he was. And he was basically sold on the fact that that was his life now. It's almost like, you know, they say people could be institutionalized for being in prison too long. It's the same with homelessness. Some people become so accustomed to being homeless that that's what they know and that's what they're comfortable with. And who are you to tell me that I need to get off the streets and not become homeless? You know, they almost take offense to it. Now, most people, most of the time they know and they recognize that there's a better opportunity for them out there, but it's getting to them that point where they recognize it and getting them to the point where they're willing to take the next step, because we can't force somebody to help themselves out. We can encourage, we can push, we can motivate, we can lead. All those things that are buzzwords, even in the military, people who've been in the military have heard all those buzzwords about what you do to get your troops. to do what you want them to do. It's the same thing here. You know, if you have somebody who flat out refuses for whatever reason, they're going to be a constant work in progress. And sometimes it's just going to them on that right day after going for months and weeks. And that one guy I told you about who was he's an alcoholic, and he'd been out for 30 years. Every time I see him, I say, I haven't given up on you. I'll use a different name, his name's something different, but we'll call him Joe. I said, Joe, every time I see him, I say, we're not giving up on you. One of these days, you're going to do it, you know. And he's not out committing any violations in public that I observe. And so I just tell him. I run into him all the time, regularly, because I kind of know where he frequents. And he comes up to me and talks to me. He's like, I know you care about me. I know you're trying. One of these days, maybe it'll happen. But every time I hit him up, he's not ready. So, you know, whatever it's going to take, it's the key is to not to give up on people, because most of the time those people want to get there. They just don't have the facilities to make it happen, or the right motivation. And finding that motivation for us is often a challenge. I'm sure all of these guys and ladies on this panel here have dealt with homeless people at times who have resisted that and did not want to go with whatever the request was. I don't think there's any police officer who has dealt with a homeless person who didn't recognize, hey, you know, this person has a shot at it, hopefully. And, of course, there are the minority of them who are too far gone, who have just, for whatever reason, have succumbed to, you know, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, and, you know, that's their destiny. There are some of those people out there, and that's unfortunate, but doesn't mean you stop trying. So, you know, I've gone over a lot of the facts about homelessness today, you know, and what triggers them to become homeless. And, you know, a lot of the issues we have, too, impact other cities that are close by to us. You know, we have certain municipal codes in Buena Park with public camping, you know, panhandling, whatever it is. Everyone can get on the internet and find out what our municipal codes are. Well, the city of Anaheim has different municipal codes. The city of Huntington Beach has different municipal codes. They don't even border Buena Park. But everyone's coming up with different plans on, hey, what can we do to resolve this? And sometimes some of these municipal codes aren't even in compliance with the Fourth Amendment. You know, it's like kind of questionable. On sometimes, you know, I'm not saying Buena Park, I'm just saying cities in general. You go across the country to other parts of the country, and they come up with some laws where it's very questionable. You know, but the law came for a reason. They're trying to fix a problem, and they probably stepped too far in coming up with an answer for it. I think our municipal codes here in Buena Park are very reasonable and usually address whatever that problem may be, and there's a reason why those codes are in place. We'll give you an opportunity to ask any questions for us at the end of the presentation. But one of the things we've also done recently that we hadn't done in the past is partnering with those neighboring agencies. Anaheim Police, Fullerton Police. They have a lot of homeless people there. I don't know if many of you are familiar with those cities, but they probably have more of a homeless issue in their cities than we do here in Buena Park. And obviously, these homeless people recognize that they're going to bounce back and forth. So a lot of them stay on the borders of the cities. You know, they stay in those areas where if an officer says, "Hey, you know, you can't camp here. This is off limits right here." Okay, no problem. Then they go over to Anaheim. And Anaheim Police, if they don't know what we're doing or what our codes are, they're not going to have any idea how that person was addressed. So every time the police come across a homeless person, they're going to get some different type of, they're going to handle it a different way. Some officers are going to be more of the, what can I do for you to assist? Some might be the, hey, I'm tired of dealing with this, I'm going to give you a citation. it's a judgment call on what you think is going to resolve the problem. So a lot of officers who go on these calls have the right intention. They want to resolve whatever that issue is. If a citizen's calling and complaining about some code violation, they want to accommodate that citizen and fix the problem. Sometimes whatever that fix is isn't going to be satisfactory for the person who's calling it in because they want an immediate gratification. And so for us, dealing with these issues is a long-term problem. It doesn't happen overnight. If somebody has an encampment that's in public, that's an illegal encampment, we have rules to follow on how we can address that. Probably in years past, we would have probably gone there and taken all their stuff and taken them to jail and said, hey, that solved that problem. Well, that's not how it works anymore. And now there's more compassionate approach, and that compassionate approach is mainly supported throughout law enforcement communities, most of the ones that are in touch with what's going on, and the ones that are recognizing that taking all their stuff and taking them to jail is not solving the problem. That person's still going to be homeless when they get out. They're still going to get more property. They're probably going to go back to the same place. So what did we really accomplish there, other than making a negative contact with that homeless person and not having any trust with that homeless person? And a lot of it's just building trust with them and saying, these are the rules to follow. These are what's reasonable rules that you need to follow if you're going to be, in Buena Park, and this is what's not acceptable. And so a lot of times, if it's an encampment at a place that is a health hazard or a place that is impacting someone in a negative way, most of the time it's giving them notification. We have a 72-hour rule where we post their property and we give them notification and give them an opportunity to vacate that area. A lot of times they'll say, well, where do you want me to go? Well, it's not our job to tell you, you can go camp in front of Joe's business over here. That's not up for us to decide. All we can say is you can't camp in public property because it's a violation of our municipal code. So what we suggest is go to a shelter, go to a place, accept services, and get yourself in the program where you have a mechanism to find some housing and shelter over your head so you're not having to violate the municipal code. And that's the ideal. If we have to get you in a motel temporarily before you can move in, if we have to take you to another city because they have a shelter there for you to stay in and where they welcome you, we'll do that. Whatever it takes that's going to resolve it for the long term, because that's the goal. We want to fix the problem long term. And unfortunately, sometimes when people call in, that immediate gratification that they want or resolution to the problem is not that simple for us, because we have to abide by certain rules in place. And a lot of that has to do with that line between compassion and discipline. And everybody in this room would probably have a different opinion about what the best way to deal with it is. And I've heard a lot of your opinions because a lot of you call and give me your opinions. Not per se you in the room, but people in the public will call my phone because I was supervising the community impact team, which deals with these issues. And I've heard it all. I've heard from the extreme of we need to find a way to get rid of these people somehow, to what can I give to them? I have a bag full of stuff, I want to give it to them, where can I drop it off? I've heard all different types of people's opinions about what we can do to resolve it. And we've come to the conclusion that there's some place in the middle that makes the most sense. Any type of extreme reaction is probably not going to be the best resolution. And getting people to come to that middle ground to figure out, hey, yes, there are rules they need to follow when you're homeless. You can't just go out and trespass on people's property. You can't go out and drink alcohol in public. You can't go out and urinate in public when there's kids in the park. Those type of things you can't do when you're homeless. When you find ways to hold people accountable for that behavior, but still recognize that even when we address those problems, the bigger picture problem of them being homeless isn't going away. We have to find a way to accommodate that issue long term. So building those partnerships with the other cities and finding out a way to work with them to resolve some of the issues can be challenging. For example, I don't know if any of you live down in the south end near Naughton Ball, but there's a right-of-way down there where half of the right-of-way, this is that old train track property at Ball and Holder area. Half of the property is in Buena Park. There's a bunch of apartments down there off Ball Road. Half the property is Anaheim, or half the area is Anaheim. And the property is owned by the Orange County Transit Authority because it's railway property. So how do you think you get three agencies to come together to figure out how to resolve this? Orange County Transit Authority is basically kind of a hands-off approach, like, we're not going to take any enforcement action, you guys just deal with it. That was kind of their way of going about it. They said, well, we'll probably like build a fence up there, but we have to go through this chain of command and get this approved. Well, that was 4 months ago, and I haven't heard anything from these guys about what they're going to do to resolve it. I just know that there's more and more people building camps down there, and we have a responsibility to the Buena Park residents to address it, just like Anaheim does on their side. But we don't go into Anaheim and start citing their homeless people for any code violations. You know, we have municipal code violations that we, you know, hold people accountable to in Buena Park. But, you know, a lot of these people down there too, you know, the people who are complaining have a legitimate complaint sometimes. You know, these are people who are drug addicts. They're collecting stolen property down there. They're working on a bunch of bicycles down there, have stolen bicycle parts, whatever it is. Then they're running around all hours of the night because a lot of them are on drugs, so they're running around at nighttime, jumping over the fences into their properties, in the apartments. So I would be bothered too if I lived there and things were disappearing from my my property that I used to own, and now someone's taking it and I have no idea who, but I can pretty much imagine who. You know, that can be challenging. So building those partnerships with the other cities is key, but every city has bureaucracy involved with their city council and how they go about it, their chief of police and his way of doing it. So we don't always have a quick fix on that. And if you're one of those people who lives on the border of another city and has a homeless problem, I can assure you that we are working with those other agencies to try to come up with an answer on what will resolve it long term. But it's not just an overnight fix where, you know, we get the old, well, the Anaheim police guys told us this, or, you know, the Orange County Sheriff guys were down here and they're telling us this. Well, that may be true because not everybody has the same directive on what to do to handle this. So I feel it's unfortunate for the people who are affected by that issue of being on the border of a neighboring city where there's a homeless problem. But there are people who are homeless that take advantage of it. It does happen, and we're recognizing that it's becoming more and more prevalent where they take advantage of the fact that they are down there on those bordering cities. So being proactive, you know, is a big part of this, and we've started the Bright Paths program in Buena Park. I'm going to let CityNet take over in a few minutes and talk more about the Bright Paths program. Basically, the Bright Paths program entails more of a partnership with a lot of other entities involved. The city contracted with CityNet, who has a program in place where they create the pathway for people to find either short-term or long-term housing. And sometimes all it takes is having that resource for somebody that the police don't have. We're a little limited, the police by themselves, on what we can do or what we can give to somebody to assist them. Therefore, we've contracted out with another entity whose full responsibility is to case manage these people who are homeless and work with them and continually contact them, stay in touch with them, and keep them on the right path. Because with the police, most of the time when they're coming in contact with the police, it's a negative contact in their mind. Nobody really wants to be faced up with the police because they know that they're either going to maybe get a ticket, maybe get told not to be there. Everyone knows that when you come across the police, when you're doing something, you know, unless you're calling them for assistance, if they're contacting you for another reason, you know, most people would consider that not a positive experience. because they know there may be a consequence when the police are involved. And having this other entity in place has been great. There's been a lot of progress. Some of you already pointed out before the meeting that you've recognized an improvement in how many homeless people are in the city. We're not going to get rid of all the homeless people and find places for every single one of them. That's not realistic. But our goal is to help as many of them as we can, because the more of them that we help and get off the streets, the more accommodating it is for the people who are negatively impacted by their actions when they're out on the street. And thanks to CityNet, we've made a lot of progress. I'll let Brad Fieldhouse from CityNet go over more of the numbers on what they've accomplished when he takes over. I'm generally familiar with the numbers, but I'm not up to date on the exact numbers, which he'll probably be able to provide. But there has been a lot of progress, and sometimes it takes months. Some of these people, it took 6 to 8 months to get them off the street. Some people, it's a little bit quicker, and it's kind of case by case. But I think the city of Buena Park has taken the right steps to remedy this the best they can. And I think that some cities have done it really well, and I think that some cities are way behind. And I don't feel we're one of those agencies way behind. Lucky for us, we had a proactive city that recognized that there was an issue and a problem, especially with the numbers increasing of homeless people. And we recognized that the proactive approach, instead of waiting for the phone call to say, hey, this person is trespassing on my property, come help me. Instead of waiting for those phone calls, we go out and we make contacts with people. And even when they're not doing anything wrong, we contact them and then offer them assistance. And in the past years, we would have never done that. But now we do, and it's really the only way to make any progress. Because if you wait, it's just like any other, it's not a crime, obviously, but dealing with them is kind of like dealing with crime, because if you wait for the crime to happen, you're already behind it. When it comes to homelessness, we want to get out in front of it, help the people that can be helped, and create that environment where they feel trust with the police department and trust with CityNet. And I think when they, when criminals are in custody, they all talk about, how to beat cases and how to fool the police, and, they network with each other. They communicate well with each other. Well, the plan is that homeless people do the same thing. If you're homeless or you've been homeless and you've had a successful experience with CityNet, then you tell other homeless people, hey, I got into this, it was great. That's what we want, because if they're great experiences and they actually have real results, which we're having, that word gets out. Just like it gets out amongst the criminal community, we want that out with the homeless people, because a lot of them just don't believe in it. They don't believe that there's something out there for them that's going to help. And I can say firsthand from my experience just in the past 6 months that CityNet has helped a lot of people, and a lot of people are very grateful for it. Still have more work to do, but it's going to be an ongoing project. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Brad Fieldhouse of CityNet to give you a presentation.
My name is Brad Fieldhouse. I'm Executive Director of CityNet. And just quick contextual point of reference. You don't normally hear law enforcement agencies talking like this. I mean, seriously, that the progression and I mean, excellent job. They're doing a great job, and they should be acknowledged for a lot of the things that law enforcement is doing to find that middle ground. That is exactly right. And Buena Park is one of the leading cities, literally, in Orange County to address this, and sort of not putting their head in the sand, but really sort of doing and implementing all sorts of best practices. So can we give them a round of applause? So I think that's... I often heard it say there's only 2 people up there 24 hours a day in town, and it's homeless people and the cops. They're the ones that are sort of on duty all the time, so they are the tip of the spear. It sort of falls on, that's the interaction. I go to sleep, they're up all night long. So we are privileged to be part of the Bright Paths effort here in Buena Park. For about a year now, there has been a concerted effort to get all the entities working together to sort of really make a difference. Proactive, that's the right word. There's a lot of work that needs to get done. There are some complications. I want to give you some of the data that we've been able to accomplish, and all of this that I'm going to talk about is on a piece of paper over there. near the waters if you want to take that home. It includes my cell phone number if you want to give me a call. Bright Paths we meet monthly in the community room at the police station, the first Monday of every month. The first Monday, and what times does that start? 6, I almost said 7, 6. That's where we sort of discuss anything strategic and you sort of can get updated. So a year ago, we did a census. Dr. Marbett, the city, hired a consultant to come in and we did a census, and we're actually gonna do it again in a couple weeks. So if you're interested in sort of being one of the teams that goes out on a single day, we're gonna go out twice during a week and we're gonna do a census, meaning we're gonna go talk to everybody. Make sure that they've heard about the Bright Paths program, and if there's something we can do to help, we would love to help them. Many of them have our phone numbers. I'm gonna have Tyler come up here in a second and talk about sort of our case management work, but we're gonna do that again, so to give this data point. To date, all those entities that have been working have been able to street exit, which is that's a HUD definition. Street exit of, this is current as of yesterday, 96 individuals have been helped to get off the streets. Now that could be just somebody who came into town and literally is one of those, will not, have not, cannot. It's just somebody who just needed help right away and we were able to assist right away. So 96 individuals, and some of those have been really difficult cases that have taken a long time to make it work. But there has been success after success, and that starts to counter some of the things that cause people to become chronic. After years and years and years of hopelessness, you lose hope. And you start to act in ways that you would never say in first grade, this is what I hope to be. And that's just sort of how that works. It's very human to sort of lose hope. So we're changing that story on the streets in Buena Park. Couple things, and then this outreach and enforcement is the way to do this. That is a national best practice. The idea of law enforcement and community members doing active engagement and supporting and not giving resources, not passing out money, seeing yourself as part of the solution is the way that this gets addressed. This is how we will get our heads around this and help the most people possible. Homelessness is an issue that directly responds to resources. It is a cause that directly responds to resources. Part of the challenge is using our existing system, and there is still gaps. Housing is still the problem. If we had enough housing and it was affordable in Orange County, which it's not, we would have, but there's not enough stock. But there is resources laser focused to actually impact this cause. Sometimes in many of these cases, what it takes is a bus ticket and a phone call and a group of people that can reconnect you with your family who are willing to give you one more shot, or maybe an aunt that's willing to give you one more shot. Sometimes it's a move-in deposit of $1,100 to get that apartment that you wish you could get. And it's really the difference between this person literally continuing to live in this challenging environment they have or getting into an apartment is $1,100, which they don't have. And so they'll self-medicate and other things to sort of survive. And so the City of Buena Park has put together a little hope fund that we use on a regular basis, and we have invested thousands of dollars to help those 96 people get off the streets, and it has made a big difference. I'm gonna turn it over to Tyler. Tyler's one of our lead collaborative case managers, and we work with all the agencies in Orange County. I'm gonna have him just give, he leads part of the effort here in the town, and we got one story that we're gonna tell, or two? Yeah. Two stories, awesome. To put a name and a face, just so you can see sort of the reality of Buena Park homelessness and the success that we're having.
Thank you. Hello. All right. Thank you, Brad. Yeah, like Brad was saying, I'm the lead case manager. One of the lead case managers at CityNet. I have worked in Buena Park for almost a year now, so I've really gotten to see the faces and the stories and gotten to know, our homeless neighbors firsthand. And so let me just first say, like my perspective on homelessness has changed completely, 180 from what I thought when I was growing up to what I know now, and kind of the issues that affect homelessness and kind of how any of us could really fall into this cycle of homelessness next week or within a year. So it's definitely something, a constant reminder speaking to these people. Case management for me, like people ask me all the time, so a case manager, what do you do as a case manager? What are your roles? And it's definitely a loaded question. The only thing I can say is basically I do whatever it takes whether that be just have a conversation with somebody and kind of motivate them and let them know, hey, don't give up on yourself. I'm not giving up on you. To something as large as, hey, helping them find assistance for their deposit to get into housing. So there's 1,000 steps in between that I can go on for hours about. So basically, I guess the best way to explain what I do, one of the great ways to explain what I do is just to have testimony from people that I've actually worked with, and I've worked with for several months now, up to a year, just to kind of explain, what we've done on our end, or what we continue to do on our end, and never done moving forward, but we are getting a little bit closer. We are getting a little bit closer and getting a little bit closer. So I would like to definitely hear their stories and have them come up. Like I'll kind of start with Olivia. Olivia is a client I have been working with for about a year, and she's an absolute sweetheart. So does everyone say hello to Olivia? Thank you, Olivia. Just saying.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Olivia Rodriguez, and I have been homeless, sleeping in my car for almost a year. And this angel came around and started helping me. And I have been, because of the city of Buena Park and also CityNet, they have sponsored me. I'm staying at the Restoration House. And it's a Christian-based home, also for sober living, and it's wonderful. And like I said, I was sleeping in my car for a whole year at the First Baptist Church. So Tyler and Jennifer came around and started talking to me, and they were able to bless me and put me into the Restoration Home. I've been there since since February 9th of this year. And once again, it is awesome. And I thank everybody that has been sponsoring me for the opportunity to be there. Because with my health, I couldn't take sleeping in my car anymore. It was putting a tremendous, tremendous burden on me, with causing more problems. And once again, I want to thank everybody.
Yeah.
Excuse me, one more thing. On April 1st, we're having a fundraiser at the Restoration Home, and you are welcome to come and participate. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
So thank you, Olivia. Yeah, that's so yeah, she's been a blessing to me as well. So like I learned so much from people that I work with, just as much as they learn from me, and my life's been changed from them as much as as much as I've been able to help them. And it's like I said, we're still working on goals, and we're still trying to move forward into permanent solution. But to get to this point so far, it's definitely been overcoming a lot of obstacles, overcoming a lot of hurdles, a lot of barriers that we work through every single day just to try to move forward. I have one more couple I'd like to introduce. This is Will and Rosalind. So I'd like them to come and say hello for a second. And their dog Lucky, sorry, which is just an outstanding dog. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rosalind. This is Will, and this is our special care dog Lucky. And it's why Lucky's kind of the reason why we ended up homeless in our car for 6 months. Place decided they weren't going to let us in, even though we had all the proper paperwork. So Tyler came along and explained to them that we did have the proper paperwork and that we were going to get in there, and he got us in there about 2 weeks ago. So working full-time doesn't mean that you're going to have a place to live. I work full-time. I've been working my whole life, and one night, all of a sudden, we were in the car, just like that. So it can happen to anybody. I still work full-time. I've been at the same place for 2 years. And, without Tyler giving us that hand and explaining to them about the fair housing law and how it works with special care dogs, we'd still be in the car right now. It takes money to get into any place, and without CityNet and Bright Paths, you can't save money when you're living in a car. Every meal you eat, you have to buy. You can't cook, you can't go to a friend's house because friends don't want to deal with homeless people. So, you know, everything you eat is Taco Bell, McDonald's, Burger King, wherever it is, whatever coupon you can find to eat as cheap as you can. And that's not really healthy eating either. So I am so happy I can cook dinner. Lucky was so happy to have leftovers again. Okay, so I say thank you very much to Tyler and to Brad and CityNet and Bright Pass. Without them, we'd still be in the car. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. It really is powerful. It really is powerful to meet these people and hear their stories and realize, you know, these are people. These are people with a heart that care, that are trying, and they're people. You know, these are people that love us and we love them, and that's our duty, is just to try to help them out. That's what at Bright Pass we try to do. Is if I can't get you into a place tomorrow, which realistically I can't get any people into permanent housing right away. The least I can do is have a phone call with you and say, hey, keep moving forward, keep your head up, do not get down on yourself, and let's work towards this goal, because it will happen eventually. It's just a matter of being patient and time, pretty much. So, yeah, that's it for what I do.
Yep. Bright Pass meetings is the first Monday of every month. We'd love to have you be part of that conversation. There's some follow-up things. There's Love Buena Park that's going to be happening. We've got an event that's going to be linked with providing some hygiene kits in order for us to go out on the census. So if you or your faith community or your work are interested in being part of that, in order you want to donate resources to that Whatever It Takes fund, literally so that it can be used by all of us to do whatever it takes to get that person to the next step in their path. That is what it's for. 100% of the money that's donated there goes directly to those kind of causes. So that's it. Thanks for listening.
And it takes all these partnerships, including city council and city management, to recognize that it takes resources. You know, we need funding. We need the mechanism to have those people in place, like CityNet, who can, you know, be the resource for police officers to contact when they have somebody who can use that lift. There's only so much police officers can do out in the field to address this problem, and it takes a partnership with mental health, and it takes the business community. You know, I've had a lot of people talk or call me wondering what they can do. I run a business store box place, and I have this issue. What can I do? And if you have questions like that, you can always call us, and we'll explain to you how you can help your own problem, because a lot of times we need you to resolve it yourself. We need the partnership and empower you to come up with the solution on what to do to resolve the problem, because we can't always fix it. Whether you run a business, whether you're a citizen, whether you have a family member who's homeless, or you are homeless yourself, these two guys have dedicated, you know, full-time, their 40-hour-a-week job to finding those solutions, and that entails being creative, being compassionate, recognizing when enforcement action is the right solution. All those things play a factor, and you have to have officers who are dedicated to wanting to fix the issue or address whatever problems come up, because you have to have compassion for that, or I'm sorry, passion for that. You know, to go out and do that all the time takes a big commitment, and so I thank them for dedicating their entire work week to this you know, issue that impacts all of us. So with that said, unless any of you have anything else, I'll go to question and answer.
Before I forget, I just want to say we do have some cards about the Bright Pass program with an email address that you can email questions, and also the Buena Park Police non-emergency number, and that's important for you to have. I did go with Brad and the other group that went in last April, and I think I was riding in Mr. Pantoja's car, and we went to several places where typically homeless people do sleep, and it was 4:30 in the morning when we started out, which, if you know me at all, you know that I'm a sleepyhead, and that was nearly miraculous that I could get up that early. But I do thank you for your questions. I see some friends of mine from church here, and Kathy Collier I've known forever. So thank you for your questions. There are things we can do more than we've already done. We're working on it. It's a work in progress. I wanted to compliment two council members in particular. Art Brown, I remember at a meeting a little more than a year ago. He said, well, if you really want to do something about the homeless problem, you're going to have to, and I think the gist of it was spend some money, which we decided to do. And that's why we hired the first consultant, Dr. Marbut. And one of the things he said was hire a caseworker group, which is the other thing that we did. And then he also said dedicate 2 police officers to just homeless issues so that they can, if there's a problem and residents complain, they can stay with that problem rather than being pulled away to some other task. And so that, I think, has been a great resource that we've dedicated just to that. And so it does mean a lot of city dollars. And the special truck or car that we purchased also, and just their time. So the city is putting the resources where we think it's important. Now, the question earlier was about CDBG funds, those kind of block grant funds. And yes, we are putting money towards that. We just, at our last meeting, I believe it was, that we voted to include the Bright Paths program as one of the programs under our CDBG funds. Well, that meant we actually took funds from other programs, Boys and Girls Club, graffiti removal, coordinating councils, several other things. Everybody took a little bit of a hit so that we could put funds toward the Bright Paths. But our Citizens Advisory Committee had recommended it, and we agreed with them. The other council member I wanted to compliment was Virginia Vaughn, because last year when Fred Smith was the mayor, he made a subcommittee, an ad hoc committee of Virginia and me to do some research and work with the CityNet and the Homeless Committee to do some things. And I have to say that Virginia really took a leadership role in that, and she has worked tirelessly to ask businesses to contribute toward this fund so that we could use those monies to put people in a hotel or motel for maybe 2 nights until they could get to a program, or bus passes if they need to get to work or get to an appointment, something like that. So she has really done a great job in that regard. But I would encourage you, if you're interested more, contact them, use these numbers, come to our committee meeting once a month. And I just appreciate so much everybody who showed up. It's in a morning occasion. I was wondering how many would show up, and this is a great turnout. I appreciate the principal of Hope School being here, the director, or I forget, Mary, what's your official title, the executive director of the library, and others that are here. Thank you for your time, all of you. And we've done 2 projects with Jamboree Housing, so she knows exactly what our community is like and the needs that we have here. Several years ago, we did a project with the Orange County Rescue Mission to build houses for people that are transitioning from perhaps homeless situations or from drug abuse problems. And then, so it's good to keep those partnerships. As we tried to do last year, we want to involve the churches, because the churches have a role to play too in helping in this effort, making sure that what they're doing is not enabling further negative behavior, but work together and talk about, with CityNet and the police department, talk about what would be best, how to best use your resources. My mother-in-law was a church secretary for 25 years. She was basically a social worker. The First Baptist Church used to be north on Beach Boulevard, and the Congregational Church right across the street from City Hall. She did those 2 jobs, total of 25 years, and she knows the issues with trying to help people. And then, anyway, I was just going to say, finally, council members understand. Believe me, we understand the issues with homelessness. I especially have to say, because there's an abandoned house next door to me, and the owner of the abandoned house has no interest in maintaining the property. And so we are dealing constantly with homeless people. I think it was a week ago I called the police again to say there's a homeless person in there, and they've lit a fire because there was smoke coming from the chimney. So we do deal with it. We try to follow what we tell everybody else to do. Call the police, the non-emergency number, get the police to investigate and find a solution. And then also, because we have CityNet, this is a great partnership, because CityNet works not just with Buena Park, but with Anaheim and with the county. I know somebody else works with Fullerton, if I'm not mistaken, but they're our liaison to these other cities in a lot of ways. So I don't want to take any more time, but we do understand. Make sure you get a business card before you leave.
Thanks, Mayor.
There was a question earlier about the Pacific Electric right-of-way at the south end of the city. That's owned by Orange County Transportation Authority. The representatives on the OCTA board are Tim Shaw from La Habra, Michelle Steele for the south end of the city, part of it, and Sean Nelson. Get a hold of those three people and tell them about the problem. The Transit Services Police is the Orange County Sheriff. They have a very limited team, but if you put pressure on those politicians, Nelson, Steele, and Shaw, there's another representative from Anaheim, I don't know who it is now. Put pressure on those three people, call them, send them emails, write them a letter, tell them about the problem. They will have some of it taken care of. That's the political solution to that one.
All right, thank you. And if there's other issues that come across that involve politicians, there's nothing wrong with you at least calling and finding out and getting the information. You're not going to have me calling some politician telling them I need something done. It's a matter of you finding the right mechanism, either contacting them yourself. We will provide you with information on how to get a hold of people or who's in charge of something. But when it comes to making things happen that require politicians to be involved, your local police officer is not the guy for that contact. So anything else, feel free to give us a call if you have any other questions that come up. And thanks for all for coming today. We do appreciate that you show support for this, the magnitude of this is pretty big, and it shows your support, so we do appreciate it.